Hello and welcome. It is episode number 43 of the Hilarious Humanitarians Podcast, where we're going to be talking about whether it's possible social media is making us as a society more narcissistic, to the point that we're actually using app filters to determine plastic surgery goals. My name is Frances Echeverria, licensed marriage and family therapist.
I am Deanna Silverman, licensed clinical social worker.
You can find us online. Deanna, namesake of the podcast.
Yes, you can find us on Instagram at Humanitarians Podcast. You can find myself at Hilarious Humanitarian. You can also check out my mom account if you want at Humanitarian Mom. I was just about to call you Skippy, which is really weird. I've never called you that. But Frances, where can we find you?
Shut up, Skippy. That's what I use on Instagram, also on Snapchat, which has been fun. I've actually been going back and forth with one of our Irish listeners that's over in Ireland. She still invites us over, by the way, Deanna. And the website, shutupskippy.com, with a couple of blogs that have been up and updated weekly. So you can find us everywhere.
Does that make us narcissistic?
You know, there's going to be a little bit of self-checking going on, and it's going to be a fun one. If you're listening or follow us online, you know that we're both active on social media. So today we're going to go over some research on if selfies are a sign of narcissism, if social media is to blame for the general rise in narcissism, which seems to be rampant, and how to spot narcissistic traits. So maybe a little bit of self-checking, as we mentioned. We'll also check up on self-care, pushing comfort zones, and you have an absolutely amazing feel-good story by the time we wrap it up.
Can't wait to share.
So before we start, we ask that you rate and subscribe to this podcast if you haven't done so already, and our weekly disclaimer that this podcast is for informational purposes only, does not constitute medical advice, is not a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment, and to always seek the advice of your physician, mental health professional, or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition. So should we just start with what narcissism means?
I think so. I think we can also talk about, there's a definition, right, to narcissism, and then there's narcissistic personality disorder.
Yes. And so the general definition, I mean, if you want to get like super nerdy, it's from Greek mythology, and there was Narcissus who fell in love with his own image reflected in a pool of water. So
I didn't know that.
You didn't know that?
No, I didn't.
Yeah. So it's kind of cool. So that's where narcissism comes from. But it's where there's a pursuit of gratification from vanity and egotistic admiration for yourself. So basically, you are just super full of yourself.
My mom used to tell me when I was 8 years old that the world doesn't revolve around me. I was like a mini narcissist, possibly.
Not just you, every single child in the world.
It is, right?
It's egocentric. I mean,
right.
Yeah, that's why when you're trying to teach a little kid how to share, they're like, "What? But it's my toy. I don't care if I'm not playing with it." It's
that brings up a good point too, because in these articles they talk about how personality traits and basically personality as a whole pretty much is finalized for the most part by the time we're 7.
Oh God, that means I've already messed up both of my children because they're past the age of 7.
I know. I'm like, damn, I got 5 more years with my daughter. Oh, I better.
You mean to tell me it's a lost cause?
No, they're awesome. There goes that entitlement. They're awesome. Giving them compliments. No, but yeah, I guess that brings up kind of a cool, I don't know if it's a cool point. It's a point that all kids and teenagers are pretty egocentric, real self-centered, which is also why things always feel like the end of the world to them, because they always just think like, this is just happening to me and my life is over as I know it, you know?
Yes. And it's with more maturity and emotional intelligence and empathy and proper modeling and solid relationships that we learn how to perspective take and move forward from there. So not to give excuses to people, but you know, it could be that maybe you're just not open to seeing like a larger worldview. But narcissism, I mean, have you ever in the field, Deanna, have you ever worked with someone who has narcissistic personality disorder? Because that is a very specific thing.
I have too many times that I can count. It's actually, correct me if I'm wrong, from what I understand, it's not it's not that common. Having like narcissistic traits, having like moments of self-centeredness are more common, but narcissistic personality disorder, when we look, especially like in the field of domestic violence and a lot of like sociopathy, a lot of people who are like lifetime criminals tend to have narcissistic personality disorder, and less criminal, which are a few of my family members.
You can also think of people in places of power and prestige and money.
See, I wasn't gonna bring up any political figures, but you know where I'm going.
Little tiny hands. You could actually, so I brought home my DSM because I wanted to go over this, because you're right. We can have traits of anything, but it's a personality disorder, first of all, is usually not diagnosed until a little later. You don't give a personality disorder to a spoiled 7-year-old, but it is a cluster of traits. And I know from working in my setting, and correct me if I'm wrong with yours, you don't just go and dish out personality disorder diagnosis.
No, in fact, usually people, especially like in the inpatient, it's a working assessment. It's a working kind of evaluation. And personality disorders are pervasive. They're chronic. And so it's really difficult to diagnose somebody with a personality disorder that you've just met.
Right.
You need a really thorough history. And quite frankly, like what we would do is oftentimes people would end up coming back because they were just so non-functioning. So usually, like if there were multiple admissions, then the docs would start to feel more comfortable. If it wasn't already on the books, so to speak, or like in their medical record, then they would start to put that in their medical record. But it's not to be taken lightly, because once something is in somebody's medical record, it can really affect them one way or another. So you're right. You don't just meet somebody, generally speaking, you don't meet somebody and go, okay, within 10 minutes, I know that you have a personality disorder.
Yeah. And so we're going to go down this list, and we don't do this so that you go and start diagnosing everybody in your family, but it's just interesting. Sometimes the information is interesting. So this is according to the DSM-5, which is our diagnostic manual working in mental health. And it's a pervasive pattern of grandiosity in fantasy or behavior, a need for admiration, and a lack of empathy, beginning by early adulthood and present in a variety of contexts in 5 or more of these areas. I'm just going to touch on a few, not read through all 9 of them, but a grandiose sense of self-importance, preoccupied with fantasies of unlimited success, power, brilliance, beauty, or ideal love, believing that they are special and unique and can only be understood by or should associate with other special or high status people or institutions, often require high excessive admiration, a sense of entitlement, interpersonally exploitative. I think I said that right. Man, if not, there went my 4 letters after my name. But basically, they take advantage of other people. They tend to use people to feel better. And so sometimes you can get these personalities that then, people who are super dependent might kind of link up with them in that whole toxic relationship of just love me, I'll pour the love into you. And then a narcissist really doesn't necessarily.
They're just there for the taking.
Right. They don't really understand the loving back. I mean, I read a really interesting article about how a narcissist loves, and it's painful. I mean, and I don't think anybody ever chooses that, but more traits can include often envious of others, lacks empathy, and arrogant behaviors and attitudes. So right now, my guess is people listening go, oh, I know one of those, but that is.
I've also seen, I'm sure you've heard it too, but unfortunately, we've seen either in the media, I mean, I've even seen people that are like questionable with these, like, they're just questionable in general, but then they'll exploit people who are in need of something by running like a GoFundMe page or a charity of some kind with absolutely zero follow-up as to like what happened with the money. Mm-hmm. And oftentimes, like, I don't know, if we sit and take pause and you really evaluate their entire personality, you wonder, like, did that money actually go there? And I mean, I'm just talking about, it's been in the media. We've seen it before. Charities oftentimes sometimes can be controlled by really ego-driven, power-hungry narcissists, which makes no sense, when we think of like, what? I thought people who have loving hearts and stuff run these operations.
Yeah,
no, that's not the case.
Yeah, I would have to do some research on finding it, but there's an organization out there that checks the amount of money, like the cents per dollar that actually goes to research in these different foundations. And it is almost disgusting, the amount that's spent on administration look, I get it. Like, everybody needs to pay their bills and stuff, but there are some situations where it is just, you go like, how is that okay? And then, I guess.
Oh yeah. My mom died of breast cancer. And I remember when I was young, I was in my early 20s. I had no idea. I was just like, I guess, I don't know. Should I call them out by name?
Let's not, because I don't have any money to give them.
Yeah. But there's a well-known breast cancer nonprofit charity, okay? Nationally known. And I had no idea. There's a documentary that came out about it. And all I'm going to say is this, is like, if you're into supporting and donating money to breast cancer or any kind of cancer, like, what I have done is I look for local nonprofits, small nonprofits that are serving maybe people in my community, and I'll donate to them instead of these like massive $100 million a year donations. It feels like such a friggin' production, and I don't like that. It doesn't sit well with me anymore, especially watching that documentary. So
from that personal account, I could see where you would take it that way.
Yeah.
So we wanted to talk about this because I sent Deanna this article I'd seen, and we talked about it on the air because I do radio when I'm not doing mental health. And there's this phenomenon now where people are taking in their selfies, highly edited, often with Snapchat filters, taking them into plastic surgeons and saying, make me look like this.
Are they trying to do like the dog filter? Or you knew that was coming.
The deer ears.
No, joke. No. In all seriousness, this is not good.
If it was, it would make more sense. But no, it's the pretty filters. It's the highly edited things that we can do on phones now. So I don't know what's worse. I don't know if you take a picture of, the like, here, make me look like Gal Gadot, or here, make me look like me, but better, because I did all this editing on my smartphone. But it's starting to cause alarm. This was an article that was published in the Washington Post, and it says, patients are desperate to resemble their doctored selfies. Plastic surgeons are alarmed by what they're calling Snapchat dysmorphia. Now, body dysmorphia is something is in the DSM, and it's in line with the obsessive compulsive disorders, and it's where you can fixate and think something is infinitely worse, I guess, than it really is about your body.
Do you have that? I have that. I have that for a certain body part.
I have. Do you care to say what body part?
Yeah, I don't care. I have not, no joke, I have not worn a tank top probably since I was a small child. I hate my arms.
Okay.
Like, with a passion. I like my arms like from my elbow to my hand, but elbow to my shoulder, it's
absolutely
awful.
not.
Like, in my head, it's like catastrophic. And it's just my arms. It's so, and like, I even, like, as I've grown older, and especially once I've become a mom, and I'm like, oh, I do not want to pass down these body image issues and stuff to my daughter. I've gone through enough therapy and stuff to be pretty aware of my own stuff, like own
right.
shit, But I can't shake it. I went to a bachelorette party this past weekend, and they had everyone's wearing matching tank tops, and I damn near had a panic attack. I was like, oh God, no. I ended up just being a schmuck and wearing like one of those cardigan things over it because I can't do it. I just can't bring myself to do it.
I think that's a good example of what we're talking about in terms of this dysmorphia thing that we're bringing up with the Snapchat. I don't have a particular body part. Mine's just my whole fucking body. It's just.
But people do have that
disorder stuff, but I don't fixate on one particular part. I mean, there are parts that I don't necessarily like, but I can't pick just one. So I don't identify with it in that way, but I do get what they're saying about the Snapchat dysmorphia, because I've gotten really used to, especially on Snapchat, take a photo, swipe left once, and it brightens it up. It clears up my skin. Because for some reason, when I turned 30, I decided to get like acne, which is lame. Like, happy birthday. But that filter. So if I take a picture and I don't have that, it's just a wash. It's not the crazy Snapchat filter that used to be on there that made everything pink.
No, I hear you. I know exactly what you're talking about. I use the same thing. I do it. On the Instagram, there's that filter that looks like little makeup sprinkles or sparkles. And it's like a thin veil for your face. And it just kind of like softens everything.
Exactly. Right? And so that's what they're talking about. They're talking about this ability that we have on our own phones to edit things and how it's making people feel really uncomfortable. So they're going in and they're taking their photos and they're saying that it's an alarming trend because those filtered selfies often present an unattainable look and are blurring the line of reality and fantasy for these patients. And this was coming from doctors at Boston University School of Medicine that were talking about it. They said it's remarkable. What used to lie in the hands of celebrities and beautiful people who were innately beautiful, made to look them more beautiful, now is in the hands of everyone. So longer eyelashes, wider eyes, flawless skin, other augmentations, giving someone freckles, taking away freckles, all of that right there on a downloadable app.
I'm probably the only maybe I'm the one of a few that have done this, but okay. A part of me understands why people do this. And then a part of me, and this could be like my self-deprecating like personality, is like when I was single and doing online dating, everybody puts their best pictures, their best pictures up on their profile. I would do the opposite. I would put up like some of the worst pictures and I would never ever lie about like my height and weight. Not that it should matter. I get it.
Right.
But I would do this like self-deprecating thing where I was like, I'm going to set up the expectation that I look like this. And then when I show up, I look actually much better in person.
That's a good way to do it because it's often the opposite.
And so that actually has like come up in my memory like weekly when I look at people online where I'm like, it's very clear that they're using Facetune at these apps.
Which I just learned about.
I do like Facetune a lot, mainly because you can also like brighten up the entire picture. There's a lot. It's kind of like Photoshop in a weird way. Actually, it's not. A lot of people who like know Photoshop well are going to like write me hate mail. But there's a lot you can do with it. However, I think to myself, you're going to end up seeing people in person, right? Like,
so I've been doing a lot of the online dating in the last few months. That's where I'm meeting people. And so it leads to just conversations online with other people doing it from a listener perspective when I'm doing my radio show. And this one guy told me that he kind of got catfished because the photos didn't really match up. And so I could see that happening all the time.
Right.
So what this is talking about is that when we get fixated on everything that we want to fix about ourselves using Facetune or Snapchat filters or this or that, then we are not happy with what we see in the mirror. And so we're becoming, and this is what leads into what we were talking about, selfies and social media becoming narcissistic. Our society is becoming more and more preoccupied, obsessed with social media and images and photographs and what we look like. So now everywhere you go, people are taking selfies and then going to social media. So they've seen double-digit increases in people who have come in and said, I want to look better in selfies. That is crazy.
I just think this whole like our society with the social media stuff, I feel like our reality has just become I don't know, like what's fantasy and what's reality? You know what I mean? Overexposure to apps that we can alter the way we look. It's an overexposure of images that we're looking at of people who look like friggin' mannequins. And then it's just like, what's real? And it's like, I don't know. So that's why I personally try to do my best with showing people what I look like on Instagram. Like right now, I'm not going to get super into it, but right now I'm weaning my daughter from nursing, and I've been posting stories and updates every single day. And I've seen people who are like running around like they're like, oh, I'm just so crazy and I'm doing all this stuff. But you could tell that their pictures are like heavily altered. And I'm like, no, listen, by the way, they look awesome. So I'm not judging them, but I'm like, I'm just going to give you the realness. So here are all my age spots. Here's this. Here's my frazzled hair, my like dry patches. And then people just so appreciate it. But then on the flip side, we're all just kind of hoping that we all look better. I don't know. It's so maddening.
Well, I think it starts with bringing it up so that we kind of take a step back, because it's really easy to get caught up in the loop of it. And so here you have this thing about people now wanting to look more like their heavily edited photos. I personally will never download face paint or whatever it was you called it, because I don't Facetune, face paint, Microsoft Office. I don't know. Anyway, I will never download that because I don't want the, what's the word I'm looking for? Like the temptation to do it, if that makes sense.
Oh yes. We mentioned that on a previous episode. I talked about Facetune, and I'm like, you should try it out. And you're like, you know what? I don't actually feel comfortable.
No. And because if that's a slippery slope for me, because I already have enough of look, I will have to take 50 million photos before there's one that I like, but at least I'm going to get a photo that is real, even if I had to get the right angle.
Right.
So in short, yeah, I can't be trusted with it.
Well, I appreciate your self-awareness, because that's a huge issue for millions of people.
Well, and working in radio has always been an interesting thing, because when I started in radio, there wasn't much of an online presence, and then it's blown up over the last 17 years. So there's no real hiding anymore behind your voice and behind the radio, because you're so easily accessible if you're on social media. So I would just assume try and be resemble myself as much as I can, if that makes any sense. But damn right, I'm going to swipe once on the Snapchat to clear up my skin. Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I totally get it. I totally get it.
By the way, I saw a meme the other day, and when they talk about how women sometimes are lying when they wear makeup. Have you ever seen some of these dudes with like bad hair and without a beard? A good haircut and a beard works just as well as makeup for some. So back up off it.
I had a friend who, well, she's still a very good friend. I don't know. So her husband has this really burly beard, and for years, I think he's always had a beard, and one day he shaved it without telling her, and she fell to the ground screaming and crying.
Oh, I'd be pissed. I've legit dated men who've had beards, and I was like, do never not cut that off. Don't. And I have such a double standard, because when I cut my hair short, well, I mean, at the time I had a partner, and I checked beforehand, not that it's his preference that mattered, but I just made sure, like, I met you, I had hair almost down to my ass. You're going to be okay with me shaving it off? It worked out okay. But I want to get into this topic because it's talking about are selfies a sign of narcissism and psychopathy. So
sorry.
Well, you know what? Look, we're all a little narcissistic, like you said, right? But do we have all of the traits to have the personality disorder? That's
probably not. Yeah, thankfully. But
so they did a study, and they looked for self-objectification along with 3 personality traits known as the dark triad: narcissism, psychopathy. I'm saying that right?
Uh-huh.
Okay. and Machiavellianism.
I was just about to say, do not ask me about that third word. I saw this article and it gave me flashbacks of like third grade where I'm like, oh God, it's my turn. It's popcorn. Okay. My turn. I don't know what that word is. I'm sweating. I don't know. I need to go to the bathroom. I need to leave the building.
I know. Oh, when I'm teaching, I'll just skip over that word. It's fine.
Thesaurus.
Right. Oh, I'm a great thesaurus. Well, narcissism, people are more likely to agree with statements like, I am more capable than most people, and I will usually show off when I get the chance. Psychopathy is impulsivity and lack of empathy. So those people are likely to agree with statements like, payback needs to be quick and nasty.
I worked.
Oh, not fun.
Oh, geez. Anyways.
Okay. Everybody listening right now goes, and I know one of those.
Yeah.
Machiavellianism. We won't spell it, but I did say it.
Machiavellianism. That's the word of the day, guys.
Yes. Use it in a sentence, not against your boss to his face. It's a manipulativeness without regard for others' needs. So those high on this trait will tend to have little concern for morals. And then self-objectification is the tendency to view your body as an object based on sexual worth. Those high in self-objectification tend to see themselves in the terms of their physical appearance and base their self-worth on appearance.
See, I feel like this is just my opinion, my general observation being on Instagram for as long as I have. I feel like most people fit into the self-objectification.
That is the way I think that society has started to lean. It's the things that get the likes.
Right. It's the likes and it's the followers and it's the seeking validation and it's taking down a photo if it doesn't have enough likes and enough comments. And it's basing all of our self-worth and value on what a bunch of strangers are saying about us.
My own kid the other day asked me, Mom, how many followers do you have? I was like, what 8-year-old? And then he wasn't impressed that I had enough. I'm not even making this up. So we had a conversation.
You have.
Yeah. Whatever, kid. So the results showed that both narcissism and self-objectification were associated with spending more time on social network sites and with more photo editing. One thing I did want to mention is that I often have this conversation, especially I try and feel out like new dates, or I was actually having the conversation too with my niece who's like 26. I don't think we should tell women to respect themselves, respect yourself. Don't put yourself all out there, because I think that's the wrong way to do it. But I do believe that sometimes we need to practice modesty in that, I'm not saying be ashamed of your body. Absolutely not. But perhaps there are certain views and certain angles that are for more intimate situations and that you're not sharing with the whole world. Somewhere in the middle is the gray area where I feel like it feels better than just like shaming for showing too much or, like shaming someone. It's somewhere in the middle. It's weird. It's a weird area.
You're not, I hear you loud and clear. And I just am thinking about the internet as a whole. And there's going to be somebody that has something to say about
everything,
whatever. Yeah. I could be dressed in a blanket. I could be dressed naked, not dressed at all. Somebody's going to have something to say. But I think the whole point is like this awareness, and we need to be aware about the possibility of, are we in control of actually being responsible for objectifying ourselves? And what is the purpose behind all these pictures? Did you get hired by a swimsuit company and you're making money and you're in a swimsuit and you're posting this picture because you're a brand ambassador? That's a job. Okay. Or are you just like, I got a G-string bathing suit and here's my butt and I'm barely 18. I don't know. I just get worried. Maybe it's the mom in me, but I just get really worried about people's safety and people seeking validation in all the wrong places.
I think that's what it comes down to, is the validation piece. And look, if you're feeling good about yourself, then embrace it. Now, one thing I did want to point out about this particular article is that it says, before you start accusing all of your selfie posting Facebook friends of being self-obsessed narcissists and psychopaths, realize the correlations, although significant, are small, and the sample study did not include women.
Also, they found in the study that people who are narcissistic don't spend as much time on social media, and they don't even use the photo editing stuff, because they're just about like, I'm just going to post my stuff. I don't really care about anybody else. And I'm not going to look at anybody else's stuff. I'm just posting, everybody come to me and look at what I'm doing. And they can be quite impulsive. And so really the people who are spending a lot of time doing the photo editing are the people that fall into that box or whatever about like lower self-esteem.
Yeah, that makes absolute sense.
Yeah, it totally makes sense, right? Which is literally the opposite of narcissism.
This goes on to, there's another article, and we'll be able to find these at our website, which we'll review later. But this one says, is social media to blame for the rise in narcissism? And it talks about primetime television being dominated by reality TV shows and things like that. By the way, real interesting thing was, for some reason today, my son asked how Kim Kardashian got famous.
Oh God, how'd you handle that?
Well, it was at the station this morning. My co-host said something about she's a personality, and so my son goes, oh, well, did she get all of her money from her dad? Because he knew that she was related to a famous attorney, and I left out the part about the porn. We're not going to talk about that yet. we're not on that level. I said she found an opening in the market and capitalized on her talent.
That's awesome. I mean, it's not false.
Right. So this article,
they're amazing businesswomen. You can say whatever you want to say.
You absolutely can say that they are very business savvy. That is true.
Yes.
When people are making donations to, is it Kylie, so that she can be the youngest billionaire, and she's already rich just to hit the number, and we are doing something wrong, Deanna.
Can everybody just donate a quarter to us so we can continue this podcast?
Yeah, right.
That'll work.
Now, this particular study from Psychology Today, it's actually from a book called, work called The Narcissistic Epidemic, Living in the Age of Entitlement. And it explains that in data from 37,000 college students, narcissistic personality traits, just those traits we talked about, rose just as fast as obesity from the 80s to present. So it could be another epidemic. Is that
the coddling that we're talking about, and it's giving compliments all the time? And
right. And one thing, can I get on my soapbox for a minute? Because I know that people love to go like participation trophies. Participation trophies weren't because kids demanded them. The first round of participation trophies were because the parents needed their kids to feel special.
Exactly. Preach.
So let's get that out of the way. But more troubling, it says a handful of new studies comparing traits and life goals of young people in high school and college today with those of Gen Xers and baby boomers at the same age show an increase in extrinsic values rather than intrinsic values. So millennials are more likely to value money, image, and fame over community affiliation and self-acceptance. Hello, that's just American culture at this point. You can't even just tack that onto millennials, I feel like, because I feel like that's rampant.
The same article talks about how when children are offered compliments for a skill that they have not mastered or talents that they do not have, they are actually left feeling emptier and more insecure. So what we think these participation trophies are like, oh yes, you did really good. Like the kid knows they may have lost. And so, or maybe they just haven't mastered it yet. Just because you showed up doesn't necessarily mean you get a prize. And there's actual studies, guys, that show that it actually negatively affects children and teens to give them all this praise when they haven't done anything yet.
This just came up in practice today. Someone was telling me that they think the reason why they don't have any resiliency or willing to try new things is because they were always complimented so fast. so that when something didn't come easily, they thought, oh my gosh, I must not be doing it right. And because it should be coming easily. So it crippled them.
Totally. I can completely believe that. I've had so many people tell me the same thing. I have a relevant, I guess, a story in regards to this exact thing. My dad still brings this story up. I'm 35 years old, and this happened when I was like 10. I was on a soccer team, and my dad was the coach, and according to him, I was not giving it my all, which very well could have been a reality because I hated soccer and all I wanted to do was be at dance class. So our team wins. And even though my team won, my dad, I don't want to paint my dad in a bad light, but my dad yelled at me for being lazy that day, not calling me lazy, but just saying, you know what, Deanna, you didn't pull your weight and you could have done much better. I know you could do much better because I've seen you do much better and I'm really disappointed. So even though we won, I was still not allowed to get praise. People may make assumptions hearing that story about like what type of dad my dad was. I'll help you out. He was nothing but supportive and loving. I think that he taught me a lesson in that moment, because if I'm honest with myself, I probably wasn't giving it my all or even 50% of myself. I literally hated soccer. And maybe also that could have opened up a conversation of maybe you shouldn't have her play it. But the whole point is, if you're not putting in the work and you haven't earned something, then I'm not going to praise you for it. You know what? This could also be applied to like college. When you're in like a group setting and everybody's doing a project, there's that one person who's being like a total straggler and not pulling their weight, but the whole group gets an A collectively because everybody else did the work. Mm-hmm. Honestly, I don't feel like that person deserves an A. And I was always really excited in college when you got to do one of those like anonymous evaluations of your teammates where you could like call them out and be like, listen, Joe, John, Bob, and Randy were rad. That guy sucked and thinks that he's just going to ride our coattails, you know? And no, you're not entitled to that. You have to work as hard as us.
I think right now is a good point to pause and make sure that we clarify that when we talk about not fostering narcissism, we are not talking about bashing self-esteem and self-confidence, because those are absolutely important. Self-confidence, self-worth, self-efficacy are all important to being a well-rounded individual. So self-esteem differs from narcissism in that it represents an attitude built on accomplishments we've mastered, values we've adhered to, and care we've shown towards others, whereas narcissism, conversely, is often based on a fear of failure or weaknesses, a focus on oneself, an unhealthy drive to be seen as the best, and a deep-seated insecurity and underlying feeling of inadequacy. So it's really interesting clinically, because I'm not sure that maybe this isn't like insider info that you would know unless you have had the experience. But most narcissists have extremely fragile self-esteem. They're not going to let anybody see that in their circle because they want to project this grandiosity, but really it's absolutely fragile. And so therein lies the difference between someone who has self-confidence and someone who's more narcissistic.
Yeah. And I feel like I need to defend my dad.
No, your dad's look, your dad is the kind of parent I want to be.
Right, exactly. And same here. You know, I mean, there's certain things that I'll change, but for the most part, like, he gave me praise when I worked for it and he was proud of me and I did something, and then he let me know what's up when I wasn't pulling my weight and I could have absolutely drugged down the entire team. Thankfully, they worked through it, and I wasn't in any way carrying my entire team, but absolutely that could have gone a different way. And my dad taught me that lesson.
And I've done that in smaller ways with my own kids, because sometimes they can skate by just being, they're just good students, but they're not really trying. So rather than I don't want to be a jerk, and tell them, well, that wasn't good enough, because I'm certainly not searching for perfectionism. I need my kids to mess up. I need them to be weird little weirdos so they develop a personality too. But I also want them to know that when they aren't trying hard enough. And sometimes, 80% is okay. 80% effort is okay, especially if you're running burnt out or there's a lot of stuff going on. But, show up when you have to work on a team. Be responsible and respectful, even if it's a substitute teacher, those kind of things. So I guess I have the bar raised in that way for the kids. Now, when we're talking about social media and the Snapchat dysmorphia and narcissism, should we just go off of this one article? There's an article in Social Media Today that says how to spot a narcissist online.
Let's do it.
Get out your checklists. The first thing is to pay attention to their photos. People with these tendencies care very much about pictures. For example, they're more likely to wear expensive, flashy clothing on photos, and their general appearance reveals a lot of preparation. So hot messes.
Okay, so I really am not a narcissist. I can just confidently say that. I might have a little Yeah.
I, on the other hand, am really self-conscious and careful. So I don't know where that puts me, but my clothes are usually from clearance at Target or from Costco. So it ain't flashy or expensive.
I love Costco.
Oh, I know. I want to go on a date to Costco.
Oh, for sure. When I was dating, that was a date that I constantly would tell people, like, take me to Costco. That's all I want, to browse the aisles and get $1.50 hot dog.
You know what? I think I'm going to put that. I've been trying to figure out cool things to do on dates. I think I'm putting Costco on the top of the list.
Please do.
If you can't handle me at my Costco, you can't handle me, period. So moving on though, the conclusions from the study were aimed to discover whether people can determine if others are narcissists just by looking at their photos. As part of the process, researchers identified 16 visual clues that reveal if a person is more narcissistic.
Just 16.
Just 16, yeah. But for example, we're just going to throw a couple of these in there. Female narcissists tend to wear makeup and show cleavage more often than other women. Male narcissists are more likely to wear clothes that enhance their social status and less likely to have sunglasses in photos. So I don't know exactly how accurate this is, but there you go. Just some traits.
Whatever. Just look for people who are just constantly looking for praise, constantly talking about themselves. Nobody else matters. And also, the second somebody disagrees with them, literally the second somebody disagrees with them, not even disagrees with them, just makes them think outside of the box of, what do you mean? I said something and you're supposed to shower me with compliments. Generally, a narcissist flies off the handle really fast.
That is a very, very good point.
So glasses or no glasses? Glasses or no glasses? Let me tell you how to spot an asshole.
I know, right? It did go on to talk about people that have excessive amounts of friends because it could be that they're into more shallow connections. I think that's pretty safe to say in terms of when people are just trying to get as many numbers as possible in terms of likes and friends and attention. That's absolutely true. Sometimes I struggle with this though, Deanna, to be perfectly honest, because I use social media so much for my broadcast gig and it's important in that way. So if I was functioning in social media just from a private individual without that on-air personality, my life online would be so different. I don't even know if I've had much of a life online.
Oh, yeah. I 1,000,000% can agree. If people ask me all the time, do you still use Facebook? I'm never on Facebook because that's my personal stuff, and I'm I don't know, maybe once every 6 months I'll post a picture of my dog just to let you know she's still here and she still loves everybody, But if it was just my personal page, it would be private with 32 people following me, if that. I probably wouldn't be on it. I honestly sometimes have fantasies about just deleting everything and going off the grid because it's just so much less stress. But you're exactly right. When people have 1 million followers or even 20,000 followers, if there is a business behind it, I can understand a change of perspective where you're trying to gain more followers because that's your livelihood. That's how you're paying your bills. That's how you're keeping a roof over your head. So that I respect that game. I get it. But when you're not, it's just selfies and you're trying to rack up as many people as possible, then I start to wonder what's going on. I'm not judging. I'm just wondering, do you need a hug? Do you want to come in for a hug? Do you need a moment?
Bring it in for a snuggle. There, you know what though? I'll be totally honest though. There is a part, I have a theory that every DJ, we don't even play records, but every on-air radio personality was at some point ignored and felt like a total goofball. And this is our way of living out some fantasy of being popular. So there's certainly some disorder going on. I just don't know which one.
You're talking about radio DJs?
Yes.
Got it.
We want attention, but we don't know what to do when we get it. It's really weird.
Yeah.
But there you go. That's how you can spot a narcissist online. So hopefully this has at least made us think about what it is we're putting out there and then also what we're consuming, because I think that's the importance point of it all. I made myself a note as we were wrapping up. In the immortal words of one Ice Cube, check yourself before you wreck yourself.
I can completely agree.
And be a critical consumer. Be a critical consumer of the social media that you have before you judge it against yourself.
Yes. Thank you. Critical consumer. I like that. Everyone write those 2 words down and figure out the meaning, what it means to you, because it's important.
Yeah. So think about that in terms of what values these things are trying to sell you, what it's trying to tell you about your life and your body and your socioeconomic status and all of those things. And if you feel like shit, don't go on social media that's going to possibly make you feel worse. Don't follow the accounts
or follow me, and you can see my age spots and frizzy hair and the fact that I literally have not blown out my hair in a year.
But hey,
I wear the same pajamas every day. I'm sitting in the same spot.
But you know what? This actually leads well into our self-care we want to talk about, and also resiliency building. Every week we like to wrap up with what self-care we're doing, and also if we've tried something new, because studies have shown that trying one new thing a week can help build resiliency. And we think that that's incredibly important. And you have been, you've been going a little crazy with that stuff.
Yeah, talk about resiliency. Okay. I have been breastfeeding my child coming up 2 years, and I made the very personal decision to start weaning her for multiple reasons. But this week, it was starting Sunday night, and today's Thursday. I am on day 5 of weaning this child, and it has been the most emotional, trying time, but I feel really hopeful and proud of both of us, because we made it. I feel like I've gotten over the hump. And in addition, I decided, while I'm in hell, why don't I just cut out sugar and carbs out of my
God, just make it worse.
Yeah. But here's the thing, talking about self-care, I can do an entire episode about how poorly I eat. I am not one to tell people what they can and can't eat. I struggle big time with that. That's my vice. And I noticed my energy levels were just shot. I have headaches all the time. I just feel gross. I no longer feel like my body is mine. And so I just decided this isn't forever. Just detox, see how you feel. And I started to take better care of myself this week in regards to eating. And I'll be honest, I do feel better. I feel more clear and I have more energy. Now, granted, it's only been 4 or 5 days, but you're talking a lifetime of eating like crap. So maybe there's something to that. So that's my self-care, getting my body back in more ways than one.
I heard a saying once, it said garbage in, garbage out. And you can think about that in terms of the food that we're consuming, also the entertainment we're consuming. And so it seems like such a simple fix, but is really one of the hardest, especially when you're running around, trying to raise children, trying to work, trying to do all the things that you can fit into a day. But we do have to think about, our bodies are machines. And, if you go and put sugar water in your gas tank, it's probably not going to work very well to get your car from point A to point B.
Darn it.
It took a little while to notice that, right?
It tastes so good.
I read this. I wanted to share this. Someone sent it to me from our Humanitarians Podcast Instagram. So we'd like you to find that on there. It says, remember, self-care isn't about spending money on things like skincare or monthly subscription boxes. You can do that if you're able, but self-care is any activity that we do deliberately in order to take care of our mental, emotional, and physical health. It's eating and drinking water. It's taking the medication you need to function. It's making yourself brush your teeth. It isn't always fun and it isn't always enjoyable. It shouldn't be something capitalism can turn into profit because there's something fundamental to our well-being, but it has. So don't feel bad if you can't afford to spend money on self-care because you don't need to. It says Audre Lorde said it best, that caring for myself is not self-indulgence, it's self-preservation, and it is an act of political warfare.
Ooh, I like that.
I do like that. So on that note, I just wanted to bring this up because I had a really good session today. I have been going to my therapist pretty nonstop. I mean, really for several years, and it's every 2 weeks, and I justify it in my head as going, I work in mental health, so it's important. But in those several years, I mean, I've had divorces, I've had deaths of my mom and jobs, situations changing. And that has been my self-care, and I embrace it and I share that. I like to think I'm pretty well adjusted, but my self-care is, and with kids being out for summer, I drag those kids along with me and they sit in the lobby with their Wi-Fi and their headphones and they wait because they know mom needs to go into therapy and it's fine.
Good.
So
I'm happy to hear that.
That's my self-care.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that.
No problem. You got a feel-good story?
Yes. Okay. So the feel-good story this week is about a man, Padma, in India. In 1979, it says he was 16 years old and he was devastated when he stumbled upon a pile of dead snakes scorched to death by extreme heat on the banks of an island in India. And so he just thought to himself, oh, this is awful. The snakes couldn't find any shade. There's not enough trees. The forest, the environment was just dying. So he planted a seedling, every day for 35 years. For 35 years.
Oh my goodness.
And now what has grown is bigger than Central Park in New York. That is incredible. Talk about making a difference and understanding that maybe you're not going to see the fruits of your labor today, but you can make an impactful difference. I mean, this guy has completely changed the landscape of this land. I mean, they're saying that the land has attracted elephants and rhinos and deer and wild boars and reptiles and vultures and tigers. And so they've nicknamed him the Forest Man of India. Pretty cool.
It's a great analogy too for little changes add up and they're not fast. Life-changing, huge moments are a culmination of a lot of little decisions every single day.
And you can make a difference. Look,
right.
This guy he put into action what his heart was telling him to do. He felt sadness because of the dead snakes. He thought, geez, if the snakes are going to die, then one day maybe humans are going to die from the heat. And I can plant a seed every single day. Here we are.
That's awesome. Well, that's part of the reason why we do this podcast is we want to share the information about mental health, also some real life stuff that hopefully makes it relatable. And so we ask that you follow us on social media. Deanna, your account's first.
Hilarious Humanitarian. You can check me out on Instagram, Humanitarian Mom. I also have my website, hilarioushumanitarian.com, where I'm going to start updating the blog section pretty soon here. And you can also check out our shared account for this podcast show at Humanitarians Podcast on Instagram. And Frances, you are?
I am Shut Up Skippy, one word, on Instagram, also on Snapchat, and shutupskippy.com. And that's where you can find the resources that we talked about today. I'll post up something with all of the blog links in there so that you can find those and check out more on narcissism and social media use. And let's see, I've had some really great submissions, guest blogs, and different articles that have been up in the last couple of weeks. One was about trying to have the sex talk with my kids. One was, there was a story of self-proclaimed rehabilitated slut, where she talked about how she cheated on everybody in her life until she met her partner. I did have a guest that talked about accidentally, by virtue of her doctor, getting addicted to benzos. So I am looking for guest contributors, guest bloggers, and I've had some of those. So thank you. That's shutupskippy.com. So we'll be back next week.
Bye, guys.